Don't mind the hair. It's wild. And we're going to let it be wild because this is a wild things reading. This is going to be all diving deep into the shadow self. It's been haunting for a while. This is the time to do it. We're in a period of retrogrades and a season of eclipses at the time that I'm filming this technically timeless reading. So let's just do it. Let's be bold. Let's be brave. Let's put on our armor or take it off, whatever needs to be exposed. We're going to be vulnerable, but we're going to have courage as we do it. So I've got 2 archetype decks here. One by Kim Kranz, The Wild Unknown, and one by Caroline Myss. We're going to be exploring archetypes that you, us, we, the collective, need to focus on right now and dive a little bit deeper into because there's some shadow work that we need to do. For those who are unfamiliar with shadow work, it's a term coined by Carl Jung, and it's exploring subconscious, repressed or suppressed, rejected, judged parts of the self. Anything that we've deemed unworthy of being integrated into the conscious mind and expressed through our personality gets relegated to the realm of the subconscious and the shadow self. So let's go ahead and dive in. We're going to start. Kitty's meowing in the background already. Kitty is for confirmation. And for those of you who are new here on the channel, welcome. I don't usually look like this, but it's fine because life is whatever. My name is Siobhan, and I'm a psychic medium and channel for spirit, and I'm here to bring through messages for the divine. Often they come through as synchronicities, but there's so many ways that spirit can speak. Okay, so we've got 3 cards here. The first one is the Samaritan. Refines your capacity to help those you would prefer to ignore. Shadow attribute, exacting appreciation and recognition for the help that you offer. I'm hearing the good girl, the good boy, taught to do the right thing for the right reasons, but maybe it's not for the right reasons. Maybe it's for the wrong reasons. Or maybe there's a martyr that's attached to this Samaritan archetype. I don't know. Let's find out more information. We have the liberator. Light attribute, freeing yourself and others from outmoded beliefs, releasing negative thought patterns. Shadow attributes, imposing your own tyranny over those you claim to liberate, ignoring legitimate constraints. I'm seeing something here about releasing these negative thought patterns. That's literally what we're doing right now. The whole focus of this reading is to liberate ourselves, which means that we have to look at these parts of the self that maybe actually do need our help or that need us to acknowledge them because they'll help us. The shadow isn't always bad. A lot of the time we look at it that way, but it actually has a lot of power. And when we let that come back into our consciousness and we begin to accept and acknowledge it, we reclaim our power. And this is all about sovereignty. So liberating the power, helping parts of yourself that you would prefer to ignore, and doing it for legitimate reasons. Yeah, both of these cards say the word ignore. Refines your capacity to help those you would prefer to ignore, ignoring legitimate constraints. So this is something that we cannot ignore anymore. And the mentor. If you've watched the last 2 readings here on the channel, which were connected to this eclipse energy as well, the mentor card came up twice from this other deck. So I'm not surprised to see this here. Light attribute, passing on wisdom and refining a student's character. The shadow attribute is the inability to allow the student to move on to the role of master or imparting false instruction. And in the archetypes deck, Kim writes about the shadow side being about how the mentor can sometimes mistake him or herself as the source of enlightenment or the source of, the growth of the student, which is not true. The mentor is just meant to act as a scaffold or a support system. And I love the way that in the Wild Unknown deck, she writes about it. It's kind of like the difference between a fire hose and a garden hose. Too much information and in the wrong way or at the wrong times can be detrimental or overwhelming. And the mentor's role is also to make sure that the student is not becoming inundated or overwhelmed by the amount of information, and so dialing it down to an appropriate stream like the garden hose, and knowing when to kink that so that they can figure it out on their own, when to provide, when to walk away. It's very much about reading the student and their needs rather than making it about the mentor. So there's something about liberating here, wanting to help people, wanting to be a good Samaritan, taking back this power. And I'm hearing the word approval, wanting approval. So they're kind of bringing me back to the good girl archetype. Okay, so let's take a look at that. It doesn't have to be good girl. It can be good boy. It's just like being good, you know? And I think we were all programmed like that from a pretty young age. Like, you have to be good, otherwise Santa won't come. You have to be good, otherwise you won't get dessert. You have to be good, otherwise you'll get stuck in timeout. What even is good? Obedient? Why is that good? Who does that serve? This reading is going to have a lot of duality in it because it is a shadow reading. So I just want to little disclaimer, just put that in there. This is not going to be this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do reading. This isn't a what's good or bad reading. This is a let's just explore the different facets of human consciousness. So I hope that you're taking this reading as an exploration, as a journey, as a curiosity, and to spark your own curiosity to explore into these realms and dive into these parts of the psyche, not as gospel. Please, for the love of God, literally and figuratively, do not take this as gospel. Maybe this is about false teachings, liberating the self from false teachings, because what the Samaritan reminds me of is my Catholic upbringing. And I remember reading and learning about the story of the Good Samaritan. And I was like, but why are we judging these Samaritans so much that we have to single out one of them who did one good thing and call them the Good Samaritan? Why are we having so much prejudice against an entire social class or race of people? Like, that just never made sense to me. And I was in grade 1. I was like 7 years old. And it didn't compute. I was like, that makes no sense. You don't judge an entire group of people and then say, well, there's one good one, so I guess they're okay. I'm going to look up the Good Samaritan because I need to refresh my memory. I feel like, Kitty, yes, hi, I hear you, sweetheart. I do, I hear you. Okay. The parable of the Good Samaritan. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law? He replied. How do you read it? He answered, love the Lord, your God, with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Nice run-on sentence, dude. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this, and you will live. Okay, he still got points for trying. But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? In reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Okay, this is actually a synchronicity. I was drawn to a video yesterday about a guy who was attacked randomly and left for dead. And then he ended up getting mathematical abilities where he also developed OCD and anxiety, but it's called acquired savantism. And he was able to see all of the ratios of pi visually around him in the world. So cool. And then he went to school and learned the methods to what he was seeing and was able to discuss it with mathematical people who actually were well versed in what he was seeing in math. And it was really cool because it was like learning math from the other perspective. Instead of learning math and understanding it, it was seeing it and then learning the math to understand it, which is sometimes how I feel with spirit. Like, I see it, but I don't understand it. And so they have to teach me rather than going and learning about spirituality and then seeing it. It's like you can kind of go from either end. But anyway, I digress. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. So these people are just like, well, not my problem. I'm a priest, but not my problem. The fuck is wrong with these people? But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, go and do likewise. So from that story alone, there's not a lot of prejudice other than what we see from the people who are willingly ignoring the person who's in need of help. But the way that I remember that Catholic school teaching it to me was as if the Samaritan was bad to begin with because he was, what religion was it? Because he was a different religion, or because he was something else or whatever. And it's like, oh, he was good because he stopped. But the way that Jesus is actually telling it, it's not about who you are or where you're from. It's about how you treat other humans. Doesn't matter your title, doesn't matter your race, doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter your biology, 1111 as I'm saying that. All that matters is compassion, empathy, and what we actually do with that emotion, that sensation, that feeling. Because if we feel it and we don't do anything about it, then it's a moot point. So there's something here about understanding a lesson from the perspective of the part of you that rejected it to begin with, that passed by and ignored it. Because I was seeing the 2 words ignore on those cards. And then the story of the Samaritan is literally 2 people ignoring someone who needs help. And I'm being asked to think about the reason why we would ignore somebody who's in need of help. And I think that there's a couple of cognitive biases around this. One of them I remember learning about years ago was the bystander effect, where you don't feel like you're directly involved. And so there's kind of like this feeling of I'm not responsible for that person because I don't know them, or because I'm watching them, or because there's other people around. And if no one else is doing it, then why should I? Or someone else will do it, so why should I? So I guess this shadow part that we're exploring today, or at least one aspect of it, one fractal, is to uncondition ourselves from, it's almost like a feeling of isolation, to decondition ourselves from this feeling of isolation or separation from other people to the point where we would ignore them in their time of need. Since we're talking about the shadow self, it's like, what parts of yourself are needing to be liberated that you're ignoring? What part of yourselves are needing a mentor that actually knows the ropes and you're ignoring that? Or maybe there's a mentor part of yourself that you are ignoring. It's trying to tell you, hey, don't do it that way. It's trying to teach you this lesson like Jesus was trying to teach his disciples, but you're having a hard time understanding the lesson, and so you're ignoring it. I'm hearing out of convenience. And I think that's another reason we might ignore somebody in need of help too. It's like, it's just not convenient for me to help them. It's going to inconvenience me. It's going to take time. It's going to take energy. It's going to take empathy, emotional care, and maybe money too. But to what degree would we want that help? Probably pretty desperately. Yes. So there's a deconditioning of certain prejudices or certain cognitive biases here, because the ultimate goal is to liberate the self. And I'm seeing the donkey really standing out to me, like the word donkey just jumped out at me from the screen. And I remember that the donkey card came up from the tea leaf oracle in one of the recent readings I did on the other channel. And this stubbornness, willfulness. How are you using your will? Oh, the dead end. This card keeps coming up. The dead end. So in the book, it talks about the dead end not being dead. It's actually alive. It's a new beginning. It's a new start. But I'm feeling this challenge with the dead end. Like the dead ends of hair. If we don't cut those dead ends off, they keep splitting all the way up. If we ignore it, it gets worse. Yes. If we ignore it, it gets worse. So we have to make a choice to listen, Okay, there's 2 more cards I felt. The cave. Something staring back at you from the shadow. Are you going to have the courage to look at it? And the mentor. I am not surprised. This shit doesn't faze me anymore. Yeah, spirit is magical. Everything's in divine order. There's a purpose to it all. You can't deny it. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And then you're going to see a lot more of it. So, the mentor. Plato's cave is coming to mind. Let's look at that, the allegory of the cave. And then we'll read these from the book, I think, too. Plato's allegory of the cave. In the allegory, Plato describes people who have spent their entire lives chained by their necks and ankles. Devil card energy in the tarot, can I just say? In front of an inner wall with a view of the empty outer wall of the cave. They observe the shadows projected onto the outer wall by objects carried behind the inner wall by people who are invisible to the chained prisoners, and who walk along the inner wall with a fire behind them, creating the shadows on the inner wall in front of the prisoners. A lot of inner wall, outer wall. If that's getting confusing to you, just think of people sitting in a cave staring at a blank wall, and all they can see is like this projection of shadows, like shadow puppets. There's a light back here and there's people making these forms, okay? The sign bearers pronounce the names of the objects, the sounds of which are reflected near the shadows and are understood by the prisoners as if they were coming from the shadows themselves. I was also seeing references this morning to echoes. And if you're in a cave, it's going to echo. There's going to be a reverberation. Whatever we send out or project is going to come back. And this is how we can identify and understand the shadow, because everything outside of us is us. You're me, I'm you, we're all one. It's not separate, but I digress. Sorry, I'm in a mood today. Only the shadows and sounds are the prisoner's reality, which are not accurate representations of the real world. The shadows represent distorted and blurred copies of reality we can perceive through our senses, while the objects under the sun represent the true objects, the true form. It says here that apparently we can only perceive these through reason. I would agree with that, but I would also add that we can only perceive those things through our intuition, through the real true knowing of the self, the integration of the self, guided by the process of the higher self coming through the intuition. Working with spirit directly in this way, because spirit is us, there is no separation. And this allows us to understand these different aspects of the self. And then he says 3 higher levels exist: natural science, deductive mathematics, geometry, and logic, and the theory of forms. So Plato's talking about this. Yes, he's a philosopher. He's talking about it philosophically, but he's also talking about the things that he perceived as beyond dispute. Math, science, geometry, logic, forms. But if you look at this from a spiritual perspective, yes, those things are all valid. But that's still part of the illusory world. The mathematics, the physical form, what our senses can measure and therefore perceive and experience, it's all actually very subjective. And yes, we've used science to quantify these things, but that doesn't make them objectively true in the highest order of things. There's things that break those bounds. We just haven't discovered them yet. And like cavemen seeing fire for the first time, they probably thought it was magic, but it's not. It's just science we haven't discovered yet. So there's something here about learning beyond the shadows of the mind. And look at how dark all of these cards are, with the exception of the cave actually having the most white in it. So I feel like the cave, in the darkness, we are meant to explore the shadow self, kind of like feeling around for the truth and look for the light source, because that light source is going to direct us to the true light. But you have to identify the false light to be able to see the true light. And what I mean by this is, first and foremost, you have to know yourself to know what is not yourself. And technically nothing is not yourself if everything is one. So to know yourself is to know everything that you are, and then to choose with your free will what you want to make yourself. I think that's kind of the real outcome of shadow work. It's not about becoming your shadow. It's about understanding it, gaining awareness of it, integrating it, alchemizing it, taking the darker parts of that shadow and turning them into light, turning them into things that are actually usable. And then from there, you're able to identify what is false light and what is real light, what is shadow and what is hidden therein, what is false light, what is true light. Well, basically, the false light is anything that masquerades as the truth that is not the truth. But it gets complicated because everything that is not the truth is still also a level of truth. Because that's how being a creator works. You can create anything. And if you create it, then it's true to a certain degree. But is it the ultimate truth? Not necessarily. What is accurate and how do we discern that? How do we find that? How do we understand that? And especially when there's shadow projections going on. Yes, Kitty, I hear you. The snowy owl could be significant. This just jumped out at me, and I remembered this morning when I woke up, I looked at the bookshelf right next to my bed, and there was a snowy owl on the top of one of the books, just above the title. Above the title. The title is how we categorize something, how we name it, how we come to understand it, or how we claim it. What title are we giving to ourselves? Even these archetypes are all technically titles. The Samaritan, the mentor, the liberator. These are titles. But what's above the title? The self. It has no name. It does not exist, and yet it exists. It is all existence. And it feels like the more that we wander around and hit up against these dead ends in the cave, the more we're actually exploring the dimensions and the blurred lines between what is self and what is not. And again, if everything is self, then understanding what we have made ourself. I don't know if this is making sense. I'm trying to explain this level of awareness that is beyond the senses. It's beyond the subjective experience of reality. It's beyond the ego. There's no ego in the ultimate self. So what does this have to do, Spirit, with these archetypes that we're working with here? I'm seeing specifically the liberator and the Samaritan. I know we have the mentor twice, but I'm being drawn visually to the liberator and the Samaritan. What are we meant to know about this? Well, the liberator says again, freeing yourself and others from outmoded beliefs, releasing negative thought patterns. And I think this is dead ends, like neural circuitries that really don't get us anywhere when it comes to thinking about ourselves. They keep showing me like blurred lines, the real world. What is reality? What is not? How we perceive it. Is that the truth? What's actually out there? Is that the truth? And then the titles that we give to things, the names, how we categorize everything. Is that the truth? Or is there something above that? And I'm seeing that, yeah, of course there is something above that. I'm seeing something here about the light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm also seeing this energy of like weaving through, but like they're jumping through these wires. And this kind of is reminding me, this energy, like with all the crisscrossiness, it's like lasers, and you're trying to move through the lasers without touching them and setting off the security alarms. So there's something here that, again, avoidance and ignoring are coming up. And these are legitimate constraints in some way that we need to acknowledge. Legitimate constraints. Oh my God. Kitty will just not stop meowing, and it's annoying me, so I'm going to let her in. Okay. So I don't know if I'll keep that in or what, but Kitty's been meowing at the door the whole time, and I was ignoring her, because she does this sometimes. But if I let her in, then she sometimes gets bored and wants to go back out again, and I have to keep the door closed because the laundry machine's going. But she seems to be content with the fact that I've let her in. So there's some part of you that's scratching at the door, that's meowing at the door, that's clawing at the door desperately, let me in, let me in. And you've been ignoring it. And how this is going to show up is going to be different from person to person, but maybe it's like this part of you that's showing up through how you see other people, projecting onto other people these traits or skills or talents or desires that you feel that you lack or fear that you lack. This can show up as obsession. This can show up as anxiety and fear, but having no real reason for it. Like, there's always a reason. It's just maybe you're not seeing it or you're ignoring it because it feels overwhelming. But this is a part of the self that's seeking liberation. And we need to choose to stop and acknowledge that part of the self, because it's like bleeding on the side of the road, asking for help, or it's clawing at the door and it needs to get in. Now, the thing is that it may feel overwhelming, and that's where the mentor comes in, I think, because the mentor helps us to see what and when something is appropriate. Okay, we're going to go in with the tea leaves now. So what is the mentor helping us to do here? What is the role the mentor is playing right now? The valley, deep personal strength and peace that assure success. Camera doesn't like to focus too much on these cards, but there's what the mentor is helping us do. Achieve success through deep personal strength. This allows us to feel that sense of peace, which I think is the success. But this kind of deep personal strength is acquired over time. Like, muscles need time to build up, and they are strengthened through periods of, you tear them, so you put strain onto them, and then they have to have time and the resources to repair themselves. Too much strain, that's just trauma without any rest or without any integration. So this isn't about pushing into the shadow self and going in there guns a-blazing, running into the cave like, ah. This is about being able to see the signs of something that's coming up and not ignore it. To have the strength to look at it. Okay, let me see. Oh, we have the casket and the broken bridge. Someone going out of your life or the end of a situation, unsuccessful outcome to a problem. Now, this is directly opposed to something that assures success that we had with the Valley card and the mentor. So if you refuse to let this thing die, if you are afraid to have a broken bridge, then this is not going to be a successful outcome. But what they're showing me is somebody who's been buried alive. Yeah, they're showing me like somebody, clairvoyantly, just somebody inside the casket clawing. Again, clawing it seems to be a repetitive symbol. Clawing at the inside of the casket, trying to get out, buried alive. This is like burying something, part of yourself deep into the subconscious, but it's still alive and it needs you. It's not dead. And the dead end, again, it's like, it's not dead, it's alive. And look, the hand almost looks like it's coming out of the ground. Like, I'm alive. It's like a zombie, but it's not. It's a part of you. I have been seeing themes, and it's like spring at the time that I'm filming this, but I have been seeing themes about like the 8th house and Halloween and Scorpio. And so October could be significant here. But I was seeing like zombies and ghosts and poltergeists and vampires and references to mummies and things like that. This is all very Halloween-y, very spooky, but this is shadow stuff too. Like these archetypes of the vampire, archetypes of the zombie, the undead, cannibalism, feeding on or preying on the life of another. Where are we doing that unconsciously? Where are we sacrificing parts of ourselves at the altar of the gods, is what Spirit just said. Where are we sacrificing parts of ourselves at the altars of the god? And they're showing me like Mayan blood sacrifices and shit like that. So where have you and what gods are you worshiping? What false gods are you worshiping? Have you sacrificed a part of yourself that was too timid? They're showing me like a little book mouse or nerdy or whatever, because the gods that you worship are cool and suave. This doesn't have to apply, but do you see where I'm going with this? It's like, have we sacrificed our desire for dessert? I didn't mean to desire dessert. They have been showing me ice cream a lot. Have we sacrificed our desire for dessert at the worship of the false altar of fitness and aesthetic? There's something to be said for health, right? Take care of your body, obviously. Nothing in extremes is going to be healthy. But do you see where I'm going with this? So if the bridge is broken, then we need to reconstruct it. They have been showing me builders fixing it. This is Virgo season. Virgo is the fixer, the healer, the cleanser. And it's very practical, very logical. So we have to build the bridge. And how do we do that? Well, Socrates explains how the philosopher is like a prisoner freed from the cave and comes to understand that the shadows on the wall are not the direct source of the images themselves. A philosopher, or a spiritual seeker, aims to understand and perceive the higher levels of reality. However, the other inmates of the cave do not even desire to leave their prison, for they know no better. Maybe this is even seeing parts of yourself, i.e. other people who are unawakened, as shadow aspects of the self, and not having to force your awakened agenda on them in that distorted mentor, distorted Samaritan, distorted liberator aspect. Like, let me wake you up because you're still asleep and you're a part of me and I want to be fully awake. No. That's not how you do it. You don't wake them up. You wake more up in you. You look at the part of yourself that is still stuck on the dependency on the outside world, reflecting what you already know inside. Worshipping the false gods. They're saying it again. The false gods, anything on the outside, the material realm is all false gods. They're gods because a god is something that creates and something that exists. And where do gods come from? Gods come from gods. The external reality is something that we created. It's a product of the mind. So we have to, they were showing me shovels yesterday too. We have to dig this up. We have to dig deeper. We have to be willing to dive into that dark shadow. And not doing it recklessly, but with a guiding light, ideally, a shadow mentor. Maybe this is working with a psychologist. Maybe this is working with a hypnotherapist. Maybe this is working with a healer. Maybe this is working with a shaman. Or maybe this is working with a guide that you already have in the spirit realm who is trying to direct you through the signs, the synchronicities, the intuitive hits, the downloads that you get, the people that you're coming across, the situations, the conflicts, everything that's showing up in your external reality or internal reality, and how those are meant to merge, and you're supposed to integrate and understand them. I'm hearing the Undertaker, and they're showing me the Undertaker with the shovel at the grave. But they're also showing me the Undertaker, which was like a WWF, or it's WWE now, but back in my day, it was WWF. The Undertaker. I feel like I want to look that up. I don't know why. Okay, hold on. Maybe there's something about his story that's relevant here. The Undertaker and Kane reunited to rewatch WrestleMania. That's the first thing that pops up. But the Kane reminds me of Cain and Abel. One brother killed the other brother. It's like killing a part of the self. Oh, and then the first question that people have asked is, are Undertaker and Kane real brothers? So something about like this dead part of the self that was killed off by the other brother. It's because it was seen as evil or bad. And it needs to be kind of resurrected here in a way so that we can understand the shadow part of it. Okay, so I'm just reading the Wikipedia on The Undertaker. He had these themes of undead, macabre, funerary, dead man persona. And then he began to adopt a biker identity nicknamed American Badass. So funny. He resurrected the dead man gimmick in 2004, but still kept some of the American Badass. So it's like there's this theme of resurrection and integrating these two aspects, American Badass and the dead man. Interesting. Maybe there's something about America, because she's holding up this torch and it's reminding me of the Statue of Liberty. And for those who don't know, I'm not American. I'm just your friendly northern neighbor. Don't boo me. That pissed me off. People booing each other's anthems at hockey games. That really pissed me off. Like, don't disrespect an entire nation because of one man's agenda. Maybe this is the opposite of that Samaritan energy. Be kind to your neighbor. That was the story of the Samaritan. Canada and America are neighbors. Be kind to your neighbors. It's not even just about the neighbors. It's like, be kind to your fellow humans. They just said, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Why are we getting so biblical in this one? Let's look that up. The lamb and the lion. I was seeing references to the lamb and the lion yesterday too. It was like, do you want to be the lamb or do you want to be the lion? Well, I think it's about having them lie together in the sense that neither one is dominant, and you're able to integrate both the aspects of strength and ferocity and also weakness and timidity, and being able to have and harmonize those aspects of the self. And if we look at Canada and the States, I feel like the US is kind of like the lion of industry, and Canada is more like the lamb. But I'm not going to make this political, okay? Just like, it's not about that. I'm just looking at these aspects of the shadow and how they're presenting at a more, in astrological terms, mundane level. Mundane meaning they are more global. Okay, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures in the valley. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, rod and staff codes, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. There's a lot of oil anointing in these Bible verses. People just go around anointing other people with oil. Is that like a thing? My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Well, one of the last messages that Spirit brought through on one of the previous readings was you walk through hell unscathed. And this is reminding me now that I'm seeing this about, yea, though it's the same thing. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. You can walk through hell unscathed because you are the light. You can walk into the darkest cave and come out all right. The bridge was broken, but now it's fixed. See what's inside, you'll be transfixed. Form strong bonds with those you love, and give a hug to those you'd rather shrug off. The poet energy has been coming up in the readings, if you're familiar with the past ones too, like the poet card kept coming out. So I'm exploring these themes of reason and rhyme is reason. Yeah, so anyway, something about second chances, but let me just see what just came out here. We've got bird flying, news is on the way. News is on the way. And we have the well, family wishes come true. Second chances, family wishes, dead ends, doing the right thing for the right reason, helping someone because you can. I'm seeing a bird on the wing. Bird on the wing. What does that mean? In flight, usually referring to a bird as opposed to a plane. For example, Louise is very good at identifying birds on the wing. I still don't know what that means. Can you explain more, Google? Of a bird in flight. Yeah, a bird on the wing. Okay, because they're on their wings, even though that doesn't really make sense. I would say they're on the wind, not on their wings. But yeah, so it's flying or while in flight. Okay. So they were showing me Mercury. Hermes has kept coming up. So something about the transmission of information. Mercury, at the time I'm filming this, I think it's just gone into retrograde, or it's about to. Or Hermes and Mercury are kind of the same thing, same energy. It's about transmission of information, flight, travel, technology. Oh, Spirit just said, what do all these things have in common? Okay, well, the Samaritan story was walking down a path, seeing a man walking past or helping. The broken bridge is about transit from one place to another. The valley of the shadow of death is, again, walking through the valley of the shadow of death, the casket. But then we have the dead end and the cave, which you can't walk through them. You stop at that point. Even the well, it's like a deep well. They're saying the shadow well. It's talking about family in this card, so maybe it's something connected to family. A shadow well, the initial mentor, a family line, a strand of DNA, a single hair, a feather of the bird. I want to go back in with the archetypes deck, I think. Let's get another one. What is this that we're talking about here? In transit, moving through the tunnel towards the light, the bridge between worlds, death, the afterlife, ultimate 0 point consciousness. Trying to think what else. Yeah, the rainbow bridge. But like the bridge between the subconscious and the conscious, you know? News is on the way, taking flight on what did you say? On fear's wings, flight. Say it all the way through. On fear's wings, flight takes place. Interesting. And we have Aeros, the god of love. On fear's wings, flight takes place. What does that mean? If fear has wings, flight, elevation. There's something about buoyancy, and they're showing me like wind current, air current, lift. I don't know how fear factors into this. Eros is about love. I would see love as what lifts you up. Love lift us up where we belong, where the eagles fly, or the owls. In such a weird mood today. Let me look up Aeros because this is a new card. Haven't seen this come out yet. I do want to read The Cave too, and I just found it, so I'll keep my finger there, but I do want to find Aeros first. We could be heroes just for one night. Me and my friend used to sing that all the time from Moulin Rouge. Loved that movie and that song. And Spirit has been showing me themes to do with heroes, knight in shining armor, and the princess. Like, again, these are archetypes of the shadow that maybe we've relegated some hero aspect of ourself there. Bravery, kindness, strength. I just saw The Mask, and I was thinking about The Mask, Stanley Ipkiss, this morning, like Jim Carrey. Where are you, LXII? LX. I said LXII, and the sword is LXII. What is LXII? 62. Anyway. Okay, I found it. Eros, love as desire, eroticism, and sensuality. Though Eros can be depicted as unbridled sexuality and eroticism, a more contemplative understanding of this archetypal energy leads us to the root of desire itself. What do we long for? Why are we awakened by love? What makes us hesitate in the face of intimacy? Eros reconnects us with the primal longing to merge with another human being, nature, music, art, plants, food, or anything that we perceive we are separate from. Eros allows us to momentarily unite. Our heart embraces otherness, and in doing so, we further understand our own. Our life force awakens. This card reveals an inevitable initiation into love's labyrinth. Oh my God, they were showing me references to labyrinths and mazes and garden mazes and hedges and like the labyrinth of the mind. I'm seeing the Labyrinth, the movie, like from the 80s with David Bowie. Was that David Bowie? And all the little Jim Henson Muppet goblins. You may find yourself swirling in a new territory of desire and sensuality. Explore the labyrinth with a curious and honest heart, and remember, though the way is circular, you are always being led toward its center. The center is the heart, being led towards the center. Yeah, this does feel like an initiation. It's part of the development of personal strength, understanding how to become intimate with these parts of the self that we've divorced ourselves from, that we've had a broken bridge between, that we've attempted to bury or sacrifice or kill off, or that we've told that are bad and they need to go sit in the corner. But these are parts of ourselves that deserve love. And in the sense of love, I mean understanding. They deserve to be included through the state of awareness that we need to be able to understand them, and then ask them what they need and what we need from them. Because all love and relationships are or should be mutual. Okay, let me look at the cave. Those who are fortunate enough to find and enter the cave are forever changed. Yeah, it's that initiation energy again. It is a place of potent power, acting both as portal to another realm and a space for sacred ritual and initiation. It literally says, okay. They've also been showing me like windows and doors and locks and keys. The well is reminding me of the show Lock and Key. They've got that well with like, and they've got all the keys. The mind key fascinates me. They can like open up and create a second version of themselves and go into their own mind and explore it. There's something about that. Yeah, definitely. Archetypally. And I can't remember. They keep saying Goblin Queen, Goblin King in my head. That's from The Labyrinth, the movie The Labyrinth. Okay, they're saying, what? They said the nature of the sky demon. And I remember in one of the previous readings, we were talking about a sky god. So if there's gods and demons are not separate, like it's all one thing when you understand unity. But from the dualistic perspective, they're complete opposites and they oppose each other. But this is the nature of the dualistic illusion. All that really matters is what we do, what we choose to create. They said whether the cave is illusory or not, what you choose to perceive, retrieve, and create will be your reprieve. Anyway, the cave is a place to return for meaningful retreat, where one can see the true self in the darkness. In esoteric teachings, the cave is known to reside in the center of the heart. Oh, Aeros, yeah. The center of the heart. Within its walls, the whispers of compassion and self-understanding can be heard. Yet because of its mystery and power, many of us fear the cave and never try to find it. We busy ourselves in the bright lights of the city, while the cavernous and dimly lit chamber calls out to us in the night. Where is your cave? And I'm hearing cave of the mind. You already know. Return to it and tend the fire. In the dark aspect of it, it's withdrawal, isolation, and hiding. Yeah, ignoring. Maybe it's ignoring the world outside, hiding in the cave. Maybe too much of that has caused repression of the courage or strength that it requires to go out there and participate and to see different parts of the self. Or the other side, maybe there's too much distraction with the outside world and going into the cave has been ignored or put on the back burner because it's dark and scary and lonely in there and you don't want to go in and have to face those things. Either way, whichever side of the spectrum we fall on, we are needing the strength and courage to go within, to look, whether it's to look within by looking out or to look within by looking in. Doing this is going to release us from these outmoded beliefs, these negative thought patterns that keep coming up in dead ends. It's going to lead us home. And I feel like I want to read the sword. I don't even know where it went, but let me see if I can find the sword in here again. There it is, the sword. To use the sword is to decide. The blade separates one reality from another. The choice is made and all else falls away. If you find the sword in your grasp, you can no longer hesitate. This weapon requires a clear and decisive mind and a willingness to act. An onlooker may think the sword bearer is hasty and violent, but the most compassionate and responsible gesture is one that is honest, swift, and accurate. Our first encounter with the sword is at birth, when the cord we share with the mother is cut. This moment defines our separation from her and begins our journey of becoming ourself. It's like this individuation. We must make these cuts again and again if we are to grow. That's what I was saying before about the hair. If you don't cut the hair, the split end goes all the way up and it will not let your hair grow long. Decisions shape our life, and the sword is an infamous shaper of destiny. Where do we need to demolish the bridge and cut ties or cut cords? For the purpose of individuation. for the purpose of reintegration with the self, laying something finally to rest in a way that's actually healthy and needed. The grieving process occurs. That thing is actually dead, and it can be subsumed or reabsorbed into the ground, laid to rest. I'm hearing, laid to rest, and put it in the ground where it can finally be at peace, rest in peace. But where do we have to repair the broken bridges that prevent us from going to the places we need to go to discover the parts of the self that we have relegated to the underworld or put in that casket that are not dead yet? They're not dead yet. The sword separates one reality from another. It's reminding me of The Subtle Knife, the book, The Subtle Knife, where they use a blade to cut into different dimensions. That's in a series of books. The first one was The Golden Compass. Nostalgia has also been a theme that's been coming up, and those books are books that I read when I was younger, so they do have a lot of nostalgic value for me. This may be a time that we're exploring the shadow through nostalgia, whether good or bad. Memories of the past evoke parts of ourselves, pain points is what Spirit just said, and we're meant to explore those. They're saying repair the bridge and then deconstruct it. So they showed me this broken bridge being repaired, and then bit by bit, breaking it all back down again so that it's not broken anymore. It's just not there. Maybe because the land masses have merged, or maybe because you don't need to go back there anymore, because you've finally found what you were looking for in that no man's land, right? Like the no title. There's no face to this, no face. Spirited Away came up, the greed, the pigs, the greed, no face. Journeying into the mind. And since the poet card and all of these myths and legends were coming up in previous readings, and I'm referencing all these stories, I feel like this is a good way to explore the shadow and the archetypes of the shadow, is looking at stories and what characters really evoke repulsion within us or attraction within us, because either way, there's something there. Whether it's a negative force or a positive one, it is a part of the self that is resonating with that. Yeah, they're saying requires further exploration. And that's not going to be in this reading. That's going to be for you to do. What requires further exploration for you? I will let you go and explore that. But I hope that this reading was helpful and evoked some kind of curiosity in you, or gave you some clues or some indicators, breadcrumbs from Spirit to go and pursue these parts of the past or the shadow that have been relegated to these areas of the mind that do need to be retrieved, or at least, at the very least, seen and understood. Okay, so I'll leave it there, guys. Thanks so much for going on this deep dive with me. I very much appreciate you, fellow swimmers, just deep diving into the darkness. No fear. I love you guys, and we'll see you in the next reading. Bye.